Hey, I'm Matt with Let's Talk Music, and I'm here with Andrew Hagar. Where are you joining us from tonight, buddy?
I'm up just outside of Oakland in Northern California.
Okay. How's the weather
Yeah.
out there?
It's actually been really nice the past couple of days. It's been, typical June gloom, but we've had a little bit of sun. So I got a little sun. I'm probably looking a little red.
So, man, first off, I want to touch on your newest single, Systematic Minds. Came out the 5th of May, and really dug it. Can you tell me a little bit about that? What the meaning behind that is?
Sure, yeah. Systematic Minds was the first song I wrote with my co-writer and producer Trev Lukather back in December of 2020. You know, it I don't want to give away too much about like where I was at when I wrote it because being a fan of lyrics and songs and stuff, I like it when people have a little bit of the mystery, the enigma to it. But
Right.
my philosophy is generally that everything under the sun has been done, and nobody really can do anything original anymore. And we live in a very nostalgia laden culture now. But that said, here in America, everybody prides themselves on being a rugged individualist. Everybody thinks that their opinion is wholly their own. And I would have to disagree with that these days. I just think that it's impossible in the world that we live in, the attention economy of social media, to really have your own thoughts. Like most people's opinions are very socialized. And I
Hmm.
don't mean that like it's socialism. I mean, they're socialized in the sense that they watch other people talk about stuff and that becomes their opinion.
Right.
Very seldom does someone actually go out there and experience something and, develop an opinion based on doing something. Most of the time, at least on social media, you're just listening to talking heads give you a perspective on it. And the way that the algorithm populates people's feeds, most people generally get a similar slice. They exist within a Venn diagram. And because of that, it's hard for me to imagine that people have actual opinions on things most of the time. And like, I don't mean that in any disrespectful way to anyone. I'm just as guilty of that as anybody else. Like the people that I watch online, they feed me their opinions, and then it's up to me to discern where the truth lies. And we're all kind of living in this systematic ideology without really giving our consent to it. And I think that's just kind of the way that it is now. And so that was kind of like the basis for the song. When we came up with the title, I was just like, oh yeah, no, that's yeah, I feel this like deep in my bones.
Hmm. I'll tell you one that I really loved, Red Light Appetite. Uh,
Yeah.
I am a huge fan of vampires. So
Oh, nice.
that video I loved. Um,
Awesome.
and you had Lexi Lynn Frazier playing guitar.
Yep. The homie Lexi.
She was she was ripping it up, man.
Oh yeah, man. She's an incredible guitar player, like in real life, the sweetest person. I know Lexi from way back, and yeah, I just asked her if she randomly wanted to be in the video because we were planning on doing something together, and she flew out, same day, got it done. Flew out early the next morning to go play a show in Phoenix, and we shot that in Austin, Texas. So it was pretty crazy. It was a whirlwind, but I'm a huge fan of like B horror movies ever since I was a kid. Like I love From Dusk Till Dawn, and when we were
Oh,
writing the song, yeah, I was like, oh man, Red Light Appetite just it needs like a vampire theme music video. So I wanted to do a kind of cowboys and vampires twist on From Dusk Till Dawn, and we got it done. So pretty happy with that one.
I mean, it was I was watching it, and when you took your sunglasses off and you had the full black, I was like, my God, how much you look like your dad right there.
Nah.
Like
Except my
I
dad's not some demon though, you know what I mean?
right, right, but I don't see it at all like right now. I mean, I do
Sure.
kind of, but in that video, man, yeah, it was crazy.
That's funny.
So speaking of which, I mean, you're Sammy Hagar's son. You come from a musical family, but I also thought it was really cool that you didn't take to music right away. That you wanted to, inspired by the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, study karate, and you took that Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and that was all at age 15.
Yeah, well, I started doing martial arts when I was like 5 years old, and just a natural evolution of things. I learned early on that like I'm not going to sit here and say I like got in a lot of fights as a kid, but like I got a couple scraps. That's I got a lot of friends from Ohio. They grew up scrapping too. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's some of these places, like some of my friends in Youngstown, it's kind of rough out there. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
So yeah, but no, that aside, like I learned the hard way that like karate and all the traditional martial arts weren't really getting it done. So I started learning how to box from my dad because my grandpa was a professional boxer. And then when I was 15 years old, I found a gym in my small town that was teaching Muay Thai and submission grappling. And so I went and started training with my old instructor, Eric Belushi, awesome guy, taught me a lot. And then when I turned 18 and moved down to LA for college, I started pursuing it very, very rigorously. And I had my first like amateur Muay Thai fight at 18 and stuff. But music was always in the background for me. I had a radio show from like 15 and a half until 18 with a local radio station in Monterey, California. And I sang in choir, I played drums, I messed around with a lot of different stuff growing up. I just never really wanted to pursue it anything more than a hobby because my dad was so like, just vehemently pushing me away from it. But you also got to understand, like when I was growing up, was immediately in the fallout of everything that happened with Van Halen, he was trying to put his professional career back together. So, that was a different kind of challenge for him. And I'm sure going through that, he didn't want any of his kids to have to go through that.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I mean, I think that it was, when I was reading your press release, it was just really cool to kind of the way it was worded was like, you had been on stage with him at concerts, for your
Mm-hmm.
birthday and stuff, and then you turn around and you're just like, I just want to go kick ass. Yeah. And I mean, you actually did a little bit in the UFC. You also was a trainer, and you covered as a UFC journalist. So I mean, you got the whole package in there, man. And I mean, do you still are you still associated with that?
Yeah, I mean, I still train. I still work with a couple of private clients. Nothing crazy. I don't train fighters anymore, or competitive athletes, because that's a whole other commitment. You have to like put them first and dedicate all of your time and effort towards nurturing a competitive fighter's career and spirit and training. And obviously, pursuing my artistic passions, I have to put that first and myself first to really make any meaningful impact in what I'm trying to do. So I came to a crossroads. My dad told me that I was going to basically have to choose between combat sports and music. And I was like, nah, man, I can do both. Like, screw you. And in the end of the day, my father knew better. I was training an amateur fighter. We were doing some boxing, just some focus mitts, and I called for a right uppercut. He threw a right straight, and he broke my middle finger right before I went out for the first tour opening for Willie Nelson. Had that been on my left hand, probably would have had a hard time playing guitar. As it stood, I could barely finger pick with my right hand. I just had to use a few fingers less. But you know, uh, I love combat sports. They're near and dear to my heart, and I will always be a practitioner. I'll always be, an enjoyer of combat sports events. But that's something that's behind me now in my life. Like my body is destroyed too. I mean, I had my first knee surgery at 25. I've torn and broken more things than I can count, and I'm sure anybody that's been a practitioner of jujitsu or wrestling or even boxing for a long time can tell you just how much it beats up your body, especially when you're doing it at a high level and actually competing. The
Right.
training oftentimes is a lot worse than what happens in the fight.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, as you get older, you feel it a lot more.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like a dinosaur some days when I wake up, an old broken dinosaur.
Trust me, man. I mean, I did a lot of crazy crap back in my day, and
Yeah.
I'm 47 now, and there's days I wake up, I feel like I'm 67.
Yeah, I feel that.
Body ache, that crackle pop, it's like, Lord.
Yep. Yep.
One of the things I found really cool was when you started to get into music, you actually launched a folk duel with Kelly Christopherson
Hmm.
and ended up going on tour with her dad, Chris Christopherson, in
Yeah.
Scotland.
Yeah. Yeah. That
Yeah,
was the
how was,
start of.
I mean, was you like a little starstruck by that?
I mean, Chris, I had met him a couple other times before. I was really good friends with his son Jesse through college and after college, and that's actually how I met Kelly. But yeah, going out there, I was really concerned with just like not sucking on stage. So, the whole experience, I got to spend a lot of time with Chris and his wife Lisa um, before we went out on tour because I was hanging around their house with Kelly and stuff. And so I had like kind of gotten over the hump of being like, wow, this is Chris Christopherson. This is like one of the biggest songwriters ever in like, Americana, country, folk, like outlaw, like whatever genre you want to call it. This guy's an absolute legend. But I mean, he was just like the sweetest guy and had so much wisdom and just so much to offer like a young burgeoning songwriter. I didn't really feel like starstruck, they felt like family after, like I said, I got over the hump. But when we got to Scotland and we were getting ready to play the show, it's like, the nerves kick in, like it's fight day, where I'm like, again, all the day of a competition, it's not the good training you had that you think about. It's all the days that like you slacked off on a run, or maybe you didn't do what you were supposed to do, or the day you ate a pint of ice cream and fell off your diet and then had to sweat out a couple extra pounds. That's the stuff that plays on repeat every second leading up to the moment. And for me, like a show, obviously it's a little different. If I mess up, I'm not going to get like kicked in my head or something. So, that's better. But I still get really nervous before every show. Not not in the same way, but I just don't want to suck. Like I work really hard, I practice a lot to be, proficient at what I'm doing. I just don't want to get out there and like, you know, your voice cracks or like something happens or you forget a lyric or like something happens. So the day of my first show, it was like all of that stuff was going through my head. I was so worried that like, oh man, I've never played a real show like this before. I wasn't wasted. And the only other shows I'd played before were like with my little punk band at like a house party or something where it's not just me that's drunk, like everybody else is just wasted. So it doesn't matter, But
Right.
yeah, and this was like a bunch of like very respectful, buttoned up people in Edinburgh, Scotland, at like the Queen's Hall. And I'm like, man, this is, this is totally different. So I had a little drink of whiskey and I went out there and did it. And about halfway through the first song, I was closing my eyes so hard. I like opened my eyes and looked out at the crowd and like everybody looked serene. They looked like they had smiles on their face. They were happy about what was happening. I was like, oh my God, we don't suck. And then like we finished the first song and everybody's clapping and like really supportive. And I'm like, oh my God, we don't suck. Yes. And then it was great. And then it was like the best thing ever. So, just had to get over that hump.
Yeah, I mean I'm sure that it happens with everybody. I mean, I know my first interview, I was I was sweating bullets. I actually
Yeah.
I got drunk as hell because I'm like, okay,
Really?
I'm just gonna, I can't do it sober because I'm sweating, I'm freaking nervous, and I mean, coolest guys ever. The band Boba Flex, I'm sure you've heard of them.
Mhm.
But they were really cool, and I mean, it was still, I was just nerve wracking, man, because I'm like, I started this whole thing as a blog, and
Mhm.
then I'm like, what I want to do is I want to talk to musicians, and I reached out to them, and they're like, yeah, we're playing this club, this show, and if you want to come out, we'll talk to you. And I was like, great, and I was all amped up and everything. But then when you actually get up there and do it, man, you're like, ooh, this is so. It's been it's I've eased up quite a bit. I mean, I've done interviews with like Tommy Vext and Keith Wallen from Breaking Benjamin, and then
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I was the names, I mean, just like Andrew Hagar, the names kind of freak you out a little bit. But then when you talk it to them, man, I mean, they're cool as shit, and they're like, well, what do you mean, or and it goes pretty well. So I mean, it,
Yeah.
I get where you're coming from. You know, that's how I feel. I just whenever I talk to somebody, I don't want to suck. I don't want to get like, stuck in my own head where I'm like waiting for you to finish so I can ask a question because I've done that
Oh yeah.
and then
Right.
I forget what I was talking about. So,
Totally.
it just I think that any way that you do it, whether you're playing in front of a crowd of 1,000 or 10,000, or you're just talking to to one person that, that has a certain stature, it's like the nerves kick in.
Absolutely. And that's half the battle. I mean, like, all comes down to bravery and confidence. It's like you can have confidence and then be scared in the moment, but you just got to be able to go out there and do what you're supposed to do. You know, that's the bravery of it, the courage. So,
Yep. So, tell me about the Midnight Suns. So it's Andrew Hagar and the Midnight Suns. So tell me about
yeah,
your.
my band is great. We have Greg Cash on bass, tremendous songwriter, tremendous mixing engineer, great like studio musician, hired gun guy, very well known in the scene in LA and in Nashville. I have Joey Ariema, a fellow Ohio boy out of Cleveland.
Okay.
He's my Sicilian brother. I love that guy. I've known him for a long time. I was introduced to him at a show that we played out in Cleveland by a former tour manager of my father's named Mark Litton, who's a great guy, salt of the earth, love him to death. And Joey and I have worked together a lot before. He produced Cold Knife Karma and Judgment Day as well. And just absolutely like exceptional guitar player, multi instrumentalist, singer, songwriter, producer. He does it all. And he's been around in the hired gun game, studio musician game as well. But again, tremendous individual. And then we have Devin Lebsack on drums, who again, just amazing guy, super reliable, salt of the earth, incredible drummer, human metronome. He's played with like some of the biggest like classic metal bands that are still touring. And is just such a character. Like I love the guy so much. He's hilarious. And just yeah, the four of us together, that's the band. And I think we're probably gonna add somebody on keys at some point, but we'll deal with that when we get there.
Now, listening to your songs, your music is kind of diverse.
Mhm.
From the three tunes I listened to, Red Light Appetite, Leave It Alone, and Systematic Minds, there's a I don't want to say a huge difference, but there's a noticeable difference
Yeah.
in the styles. Um, I almost feel like you're kind of a rocker with a kick of blues in there.
You could say that. Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
it is. It's you because like especially with like Red Light Appetite, with the whole the video, man. I mean, it really just that video was killer. It set the scene,
Awesome.
and the whole stage presence you guys had that felt bluesy. I mean,
Mm,
had that rock sound to it.
right. Well, I mean, a lot of the early stuff that I was doing was all based around like kind of the folk Americana scene, I guess. That's what felt really natural to me as a songwriter. Like I've said this a million times, but I would never ever claim to be like a virtuoso musician. I can, play several different instruments moderately, maybe call me kind of mid, I don't know. But at the end of the day, I am first and foremost a songwriter, and I do come from kind of a blues background, and a lot of the stuff that I was writing just on my own for the first few years that I was releasing music definitely had like a bluesy folk rock vibe to it, and that's where I come from. So the marriage of that, and then what I'm doing with Trev Lukather, because all of these songs are produced and co-written with one of my best friends, Trev Lukather, son of Steve. He brings a completely different set of influences and skills to the table. And, we met somewhere in the middle. And I really, really love what we were able to do together. And I'm really proud of the record. There's not one song that really sounds like the rest of the songs. They all feel very cohesive as part of a project, but they do show a very wide range of styles within the genre of rock and roll. So,
Right.
yeah.
And that's what I'm saying with those three. I mean, even those three there. I mean, I know you have other ones, but those three there, I could notice that, and I think that's a really good quality anymore in a musician because a lot of music sounds the same. You know,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and I don't mean to like I'm not putting anybody down or anything, but I mean it's like cookie cutter music. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It,
100%.
manufactured, produced. It's like okay, let's just keep kicking the songs out, and um, that's what I really love about the artists that I talk to. I mean, I don't do like I said, I talk to Tommy Vex and Keith Wallen, but I don't really do I don't shoot for the stars. You know what I'm saying? Like I want to talk to Metallica, or I want to talk to,
Yeah.
this person. I love talking to the guys that are still hungry,
Hmm.
to the guys that have been there, done that, got the t-shirt, and they're loving the way that it is now.
Yeah.
And I mean, because it's probably outside of, Hollywood, probably the most cutthroat, just animalistic freaking business there is.
100%. Can't deny that.
Yeah, and I mean, for you guys to go out there and, do your thing, and to put, all of your, you put your money into it, your heart and soul, and just, hey, here it is. I don't care if I have, 1,500 views, or if I have 15 million views, you
Yeah.
know that's what I like,
Yeah.
and I feel like with the, like, I've loved music all my life, man. I've not been big into the industry. This is the biggest I've ever been, but I feel like it keeps the egos in check too.
Absolutely. Oh
'Cause
yeah.
that was a thing that destroyed a lot of bands back in the day.
For sure. Yeah, unchecked egos. I mean, that's if you look at kind of the way that it worked in the 80s especially, but also in the 90s. I mean, artists were kind of given free reign. Labels were letting them do anything they wanted, giving them, extravagant, crazy packages and tremendous amounts of money. And I mean, it was destructive, but there was also a thing with the labels where, a lot of people like A&R guys were kind of pushing certain artists to delve into the world of drugs for inspiration. There was like a time in music, especially like looking back at like blues and rock and roll and the grunge movement, people thought, and even in jazz a little bit, people thought like, oh, you can't be a real artist unless you've like done heroin, you know
Right,
what I mean? Or you've tried something heavy. And I think in some respects that was a way to control musicians that would otherwise be out of control and, just with unbridled amounts of money and fame and power, able to do pretty much anything they wanted. But you see the repercussions of that now. It's like what David Crosby had a great quote. I'm going to paraphrase here, so I'm butchering it, but he said, music's wonderful. I've made so much of it over the years with so many incredible people that I can never sit down and have a conversation with again. It's like, how many friends have you lost over artistic pursuits? And, I haven't spent that much time in the world of music, coming up on 10 years pretty soon, but, in a real professional manner. But I mean, I've already, not purposefully, but had to burn plenty of bridges with just really bad people who were trying to take advantage of me,
right,
thinking that there was something to gain when, I mean, like, who the hell am I? Just because my dad is some, big rock and roll legacy icon, that doesn't mean that I can help people get to places they're trying to get to.
right.
It's, yeah, it's an interesting situation, but
And
yeah, I think staying humble is important.
I'm sure you've seen him get burned quite a bit too.
Absolutely. That was my entire childhood was just seeing the media drag him. I've been the recipient of so much hate and vitriol from like, you know, fans of early Van Halen and stuff. Again, I think it's funny. I'm like, okay, like it's what did I do? Like how did I like, did I hurt you? Like I'm sorry.
Right. And see,
Yeah.
I remember him back with Montrose. I remember,
Mhm.
the video, like I can see it in my head for I Can't Drive 55, you know,
Yeah.
and it's like when he took over for David Lee Roth. At first, I couldn't really accept that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I was
Yeah.
a I was a young kid, and like, 1984 was my first ever Van Halen album. Well,
Mhm.
that tape. And in 84, I was what, 9, 10, something like that. So yeah, man. I mean, it just, um I was like, man, I like his sound, but where's my, high pitched scream of David Lee Roth?
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now, man, it's like I can't really fathom Van Halen without him. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, some of the best songs ever made by that band was with your dad. Yeah, I mean, did you ever get to like hang out with them guys like Eddie and all them?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Eddie was a neighbor when I was a kid. He was super close. I mean, they were like family. And he and Valerie were super sweet, always incredibly supportive of us. even after the divorce, Eddie was super cool with my mom and I. And yeah, I mean, I loved him as a member of our family. So yeah, I mean, the guys were amazing. Mikey's still like, literally a family member. I love Mikey to death. And I'm glad that he's, still around the immediate vicinity with the band, and I get to see him all the time. And, I have so many great stories with Mikey from the road and stuff. And Alex, I'm probably the least close with Alex. I haven't talked to Al in years. But I saw him a lot when I was a kid. I'm sure he remembers me too. But yeah, I mean, I got nothing but love for everybody. And, for all the folks out there that have a hard time reconciling my father's place in that band, it's like, just think of it as two different bands. It's like, that's really what it is, because the sound is so different. I really like Early Van Halen. I really like Daily Roth as a front man. Like, I thought he was a great front man, even if, people, disparaged him about his singing or about this or that or the other, like his antics. I mean, the guy was a rock and roll icon, and all of the songs that they created together, amazing, tons of hits, and then when my dad came in the band, it was just a different thing. And the songs are tremendous. As a songwriter, I think some of the best songs they wrote were in my dad's era, 100%.
Oh
But
yeah.
they were also more like pop rock songs, which is not the original ethos of Van Halen. So I can see why people wouldn't like that. But it's like, guess what? If you don't like it, you don't have to listen to
Exactly.
it. You don't have to go on some stranger's Instagram and tell them how much you hate them. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah,
Now,
but I digress.
music wise, do you ever cover any of your dad's songs?
No, I don't. What I do is completely separate from my father. I've never covered any of his songs, and I most likely never will. Um, I mean, I grew up, you know, during like the 90s alternative movement. I cover plenty of old like grunge songs in my set. I've been covering Alice in Chains for years. I've been covering Stone Temple Pilots, would love to cover some Soundgarden. I'm not sure that I have the chops Chris Cornell did, but you know what I mean? So, but yeah, no, I love all kinds of music, and I've covered all sorts of songs. I mean, the first open mics I was playing, I was covering like Bob Dylan and like John Prine and like a bunch of other old songwriters, freaking like Conor Oberst and Bright Eyes, Flaming Lips, stuff like that. Even Neutral Milk Hotel, some psychedelic folk rock. But yeah, I mean, I don't think I'll ever cover one of my dad's songs. Maybe check back in 20 years if he doesn't outlive everybody in the family. We'll see. But as of now, I'm not planning on it. No.
Now, do you ever get like requests for it?
Yeah, all the time.
I mean, like, do you feel like, and this, I don't mean that this in any disrespect, but do you feel like that you're kind of like in his shadow? Um, because like when I advertised this on my Facebook page, I was like, coming into his own,
Yeah.
because I feel like, and I really, I didn't want to bring your dad into this too much. I really wanted to focus on you. I really feel like, your style is completely separate, and
Yep.
I really like it. And man, I think that, you and your band got nothing but wide open spaces, dude. You got,
Yeah.
and it's like I said, red light appetite. I don't know if it was the video or if it was the song or the both of them. I was
Yeah.
like, damn, hot chick in there just ripping people's throats out, and this dude's just rocking. I was like, it actually felt like the bar scene from Dust Till Dawn.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that
Except
was
for
totally
you guys weren't
intentional.
using the
Yeah.
dude, the bass play, as a bass,
Yeah.
but
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That was, I mean, all by design. And yeah, first of all, thank you for saying those wonderful things. But second of all, yeah, I don't feel any kind of pressure to follow up, what my dad's doing or follow his footsteps or like live in his shadow, all that stuff. Like, one of the best things that came out of starting music and my like professional journey in music a little later is that I had plenty of time to grow into myself as a human being, figure out who I was, my identity. Like, I know who I am. And a lot of people who have difficulty navigating a life like this, like other second gens and stuff, they just didn't take the time to grow into themselves before they started thrusting themselves into the limelight. And I mean, you see this with any artist. You see a lot of artists from, the 70s and 80s who, got famous around 17 or 18, like that's when their development as a human being stops.
Mm,
Like I started a lot later. I'm very secure in who I am and like fully formed as an adult human being. So what I'm doing is my own. I've definitely grappled with some of this stuff earlier on in my career, especially when I was doing things that were very different. Like this is different than what my dad has done, but it's still under the umbrella of rock and roll. So I can see how people would do more direct comparisons to what I'm doing now. But
mhm.
when I was doing more like folk and Americana acoustic oriented music, I mean, I was getting like obliterated by like metal sucks and like blabbermouth. Like people were just ripping me to shreds in the comments and on the little tabloid-esque blog posts they were making. But it's like I just stopped reading that stuff. I'm like, that doesn't all the bad things we think about ourselves come from outside of us. If
Right.
you if you readily like consume that stuff, it's not good for your mind. It's poison. You know what I mean? So it's like I don't avoid confrontation. I don't avoid negativity. I don't avoid constructive criticism. But there's so much like unchecked vitriol and hate online
Oh yeah.
that doesn't come from like it doesn't come from a constructive place. And so I don't choose to take that stuff in. I don't read my comments on YouTube. People are like, "Oh, you should respond to your comments on YouTube." I'm like, "Why?" Like half of them are just people talking shit for no reason. Like, what am I going to say to that person? If somebody wants to offer a real bit of constructive feedback and they're being negative, but they took the time to like, present a case and like word it in a smart way, respect, man. I'll read that and I'll take it to heart and be like, well, okay. I mean, I don't know where the hell this person's coming from or what their qualifications are. You know what I mean? But like,
Right.
certainly they have enough going on upstairs to put together a well worded, whatever. So, but yeah, I don't really feel any pressure to follow my father's footsteps, to get out of the shadow or any of that stuff. I'm doing my own thing, and it's really everybody else that needs to reorient how they look at me. It's not how I need to look at myself. You know.
Right. And I mean, I was just, like I said, there was no disrespect there.
No.
I was just curious, because I mean, I
Yeah, yeah.
that there are, younger artists that, their parents were really famous and they feel like they've got a certain hype to live up to or whatever.
Oh
And
yeah,
it can be a lot of pressure.
for sure.
And I really admire the way that that you handle it, and that you're doing your own thing and you're like, again, you don't care if somebody's, putting you down or whatever. You, you are who you are and you're doing your thing. And that's all that matters,
Absolutely.
staying true to yourself.
Yep. That's the most important thing is just keeping your autonomy and your authenticity. I think that that's the biggest thing for artists. You can tell when an artist compromises their authenticity for the almighty dollar or something, you know what I mean, or
Oh,
for
oh yeah.
fame. Like
Oh yeah.
you can see it, you can smell it, you can hear it, you can taste it. But
Yep.
yeah, I don't want to do that. I'd rather not. I've turned down plenty of label deals that weren't really great because people wanted me to do things that I just couldn't do. Can't reconcile that. So
Hey, I mean, don't blame me, man. I mean, that's selling your soul.
it's in some way, shape, or form, absolutely.
Yes. I appreciate you for that.
Thank you.
Um, One other thing I wanted to ask is, well, two things. The album, when is that coming out?
So I was going to drop an EP at the end of this month. I've recently, like this week, had some developments that uh, may shift that a little bit. Again, I haven't signed any contracts, so I can't really speak about that too much. But this has happened to me before, so hopefully this pans out well. This is part of the reason why it took so long to release this stuff that I'm releasing now, because I had a couple like failed label deals and stuff. Talks just kind of fell out, but some things are cooking up right now. So the plan was to put out an EP at the end of the month. That might turn into putting out a record later this year with more singles. We'll see.
And just last question, man. How about get out on the road and playing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've played a smattering of local California shows in my band. There's a lot of challenges for independent artists touring bigger than just out of their local area right now. Obviously, costs are up all across the board. It makes it kind of challenging, but yeah, we have some stuff for later in the year in the fall that we're going to announce soon. I'm excited about that. But we've been booking stuff for 2024, much bigger stuff than we've ever done before, and I'm really excited about that to announce that later. So
Awesome. Well,
yeah,
keep my ear over, or my ears, you know.
keep your ear to the floor, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was trying to get at, man. Yeah, I'm like just to kind of do, but no, man, I really do appreciate your time. I had a great time talking to you, and like I said,
Likewise.
I was a little nervous at first, but I mean, you're a very down to earth guy. And I love your music. Definitely gonna continue to listen. If
Awesome.
you guys make it out this way or anywhere close, would love to get to see you and maybe do a
Oh
live
yeah.
with you.
Thank you. We'll be out in Ohio for sure. I got an actual fan base in Ohio. I did a lot of touring out there with Chris and with my father, and Ohio fans have always been so great. So we'll be
Eh,
back.
Columbus is a rock and roll town, that's for sure.
Yes, it is.
We like to, throw back some beers, put on some headphones, and listen to metal and cow tip.
Love that. Love that.
Shit. All right, brother. Well, you have a good evening, man. And again,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much for your time.
You too. My pleasure. I had an absolute ball. Thank you so much.
All right, man. Have a good one.
All right. Later.